EZRA sponsors West Ham women's team, and we did the great little video cameo with the captain. And the point she made is like, I wouldn't step foot on the field without a coach. And that's kind of what we're about at EZRA. It's we believe everyone can be better with a coach. But I want to talk to you today about kind of specifically coaching and gender equality. I'm Dan. I've been in the leadership development field for around about 20 years. You don't need to know an awful lot about me, but I've done this for a while. And coaching at EZRA we believe passionately in it. We believe that coaching is a fantastically accelerating, one-to-one, nuanced, specific developmental experience. Can I get a show? Who's had a coach? Who's been coached? Okay, so about a third, half of you. What's it like to be coached? Tell me give me a sense of it. Throw you some words. How was it having a coach?
It was proactive as opposed to reactive.
Yeah, so you're getting ahead, thinking in the future. That's really important.
Safe,
supportive, confidential, exactly. Yeah, anyone else?
Enlightening.
Yeah, you get to learn about yourself in a way that you sort of change the frame on how you see yourself and your interaction with the world. It's powerful stuff. And it's no surprise that people who are coached accelerate their careers more than people who don't. Right, so if you're going to coach, you're going to get better at your stuff. This is why we give coaches to footballers, right? Exactly. It's why we pay coaches quite a lot, hopefully. And we give that equally as well, even better. Yeah, pay them loads. It's staggering, right? So we know coaching is really, really impactful. But there is an issue with coaching. Because who gets a coach in this world that we live in? Who gets a coach? There's a little issue with coaching. Can you see what it is? Disproportionately, it is not women, and not women of colour. That's who gets a coach. It's typically people who are already quite high up in the organisational hierarchy, because we can justify the expenditure, just as, it's the same with football, right? We can justify the expenditure on the C-suite, and the C-suite are probably about 80% men. So we accelerate the careers of people who, frankly, have benefited quite a lot from societal imbalances in terms of kind of what our views and sort of dated expectations of gender roles. So coaching runs the risk of becoming part of the problem, because the more you do that, the more you calcify and entrench inequality. So when we set up EZRA, we wanted to try and do something about that. And EZRA doesn't deliver coaches in the old-fashioned way. So when you meet with your coach, how do you meet with them? Face-to-face? Face-to-face. That's the way it's always been done, right? Typically. Maybe a bit more over the phone these days, but typically in the past it was face-to-face. I was 10 years before I started this. I joined EZRA a couple of years back, just before COVID. That was fortunate. I was self-employed before then, doing this kind of stuff. Business would have been on the backside if I'd stayed there. But in February of 2020, I joined EZRA. And before, I used to charge probably like £15,000 for a coaching intervention, something like that, one-to-one, probably a number of sessions, 10 sessions over about a year, something like that, a report at the beginning, all that sort of stuff, £15,000, thank you very much. It wasn't very profitable for me, actually, weirdly, because it was always little bits here and there, and it meant I couldn't do day delivery. So it wasn't very profitable for me, wasn't brilliant for them. It was expensive. It was expensive for everybody. It didn't really make an awful lot of sense. Our coaches are online. They're in my pocket. They're on an app. There's about 1,000 of them. They're all around the world. They speak every language you can imagine. If you want a coach in East Timor, you've got it, right? They're everywhere. So huge companies come to us and say, we've got people in Botswana and Namibia, and we've got people who are in Indonesia, and we've got them in Brazil as well. And we say, are you an oil company? Yes. Right, well, that's not a problem, because even if they're on rigs, we can get to them. And we can give the same experience on a rig as you get here in London. It doesn't matter. So it's all online. And as a result, we've just smashed a load of the cost out. So because the coach sits pretty much in their back bedroom, just doing coaching session after coaching session, which they love because they're coaching more and traveling less, the prices are much, much lower. And that means we can get coaching throughout the organization, which is fundamentally very important. Otherwise, you're spending large amounts of organizational resource calcifying existing structural inequalities in our society, which is not a good idea. So we believe that is very, very important. But there's more to that than this. There's another part to this, which I want to talk to you about. I think we've got a little bit of a problem, and Karen, you talked about it in terms of what we expect of people, what we expect of gender roles. Now, I'm speaking today at a diversity and inclusion conference. I am conscious, as a middle-aged, middle-class, white, cisgendered, straight man, right, that I'm not exactly the best. Talk about voices, right? Where's my voice? I'm a part-time person. I don't work full-time. I've looked after my kids for the last 11 years, while my wife's had the big job. So I'm career B in our family. My wife works at PwC and works far more hours than I do. And it's led me to a couple of realizations, I suppose, thoughts about this topic. I'm going to say something controversial, and you can throw things, but that's absolutely fine. I'm quite good at dodging. I don't think we've got a women in leadership problem. So far, so good. Silence is better than what sometimes happens when I say that. I think we've got I think we're looking at the wrong end of the telescope, if that makes sense. I don't think we've got a women in leadership problem. I think we've got a men in care problem, a men in domestic care problem. About 80% of the really senior roles in organisations are held by men. And we don't think that's right. And that's quite right that we don't think that's right. And we campaign, we work hard to try and change that. 80% of the domestic care roles in this country are done by women. And it seems to me we're completely relaxed about that. Well, hang on a minute. Let's just think about that. You can't change one side. They're connected, right? If you think about the really important roles in our society, I would suggest that if you're making a toss-up between kind of spending an extra couple of hours in the office or getting home to see the kids because something really important is happening, the kids are going to win that conversation quite a lot of the time. And if someone's not doing that, you're going to do that. And how often is that women making that sacrifice to do that? Far too often it's the women have to do that. Same for elder care. And we sort of think that's fine, I think. I don't think we have a big, that's not a big issue to us as a society. And yet we sort of see the part with the boardroom imbalance saying that's a problem. It's all connected. They're all connected up. We need more women in leadership roles, sure, but they need to chase those men out as well. The men need to leave. Right? The men need to go and do the thing that the women are also exiting. Otherwise, what we're simply saying in society is like, women, can you just do everything, please? Right? Can you do the childcare and the elder care and do these big senior leadership roles, but don't let go? And then you get this sort of superwoman effect. How many of you experience the superwoman kind of syndrome? You're like, I've got to do everything, right? Yeah, exactly. Whereas the men, we sort of go, okay, I was the chair of the school's PTA, and I used to get people come and say, oh, it's great that you do this. Oh, because I'm a man? Right? It's not great that I do this. I have more time than most. I don't need any more. Oh, it's lovely that you do. No, again, sorry, but to be honest, it's mostly women that say that to me, right? We seem to let men off with the kind of anything you do is kind of like, that's bonus. Well done. You've looked after the kids for a day. Well done, you. Is it your day off? No, this should be. There's nothing wrong with men that they can't do this stuff. They absolutely can. So, like I say, I don't believe we have a women in leadership problem. I think we've got a men in care problem. We need to dial the whole thing round. So we need to get the men out of the leadership roles, men into the caring roles, women out of the caring roles. How many women are reluctant to get out of the caring? I'm going to give the women a hard time, because I've given the guys a lot of a hard time. How many women are reluctant to let the guys have a go at this? Justifiably, because they're shit at it, right? That's fine. I get it. We aren't very good. And there's a challenge there too, okay, which is that the women are good at doing their caring roles, but they're also good at doing the leadership roles. So the women haven't got a capability gap to follow. But I think men do need a bit of help getting into some of those domestic roles. There's a kind of caring and empathy stuff that's not all men are brilliant at, and they just need a little bit of help and encouragement. But it's not okay to develop them in that environment. It's okay to develop women in the leadership space. Sure, we run loads of women leadership programs, but we don't run men how not to kind of hurt your children emotionally programs. We need those as well. But back to this thing, back to this coaching thing, we run these women in leadership programs, and I have got an issue with that, okay? Because let's just imagine that one of the genders had total dominance in the leadership space for the last 2,000 years. Oh, but we've got that, right? If that's happened, now, do women and men lead differently? What do you think? I'd be interested to get your view. Do women and men lead differently? Give me a nod if you think yes, they do. Give me a no, I think they lead the same. It's like about, I'd agree with you. It's about, they do, but it's not huge. Statistically, when we look at it, it's subtle, but it's there. There are some subtle differences. Men tend to be better at communication, influence, and building confidence. That kind of stuff. Okay, so it's the kind of like, the standing on stage and going, I'm right. I shan't resign. It's that sort of boom, boom, boom stuff. Women tend to be better at things like developing people, being empathic, developing relationships, getting stuff done, continuously. Actually, it's more stuff. Women outperform men. Look at during COVID, countries where not much death happened, nearly all run by women. Countries where lots of death happened, nearly all run by men. So we don't, like I say, we don't have a women in leadership problem insofar as capability goes. Women lead perfectly well, but we go around in our industry, too often in leadership development and learning and development coaching, suggesting that there is a program to support women to get better at leadership. These are the capabilities you need to, and it's always things like communication and confidence and influence. What if those three things were just kind of like sort of byproducts of toxic masculinity that don't really need any more of that in leadership roles? And that actually maybe just dialing those down a little bit and being a bit more vulnerable, listening and building relationships better might be better. What if we had a more female-centric view about what leadership might look like? Maybe that would be better for the world. And then maybe we stop telling women that they need to get good at this stuff in order to lead. That would be my view. That would be my view. I don't think we have a women in leadership problem. As I say, I think women are perfectly capable of taking the leadership roles that are out there, but we need to vacate some, get the men out, push them round, get the women through, encourage women to let go, encourage the men to develop the skills. It's a societal challenge, right? We've got to turn the whole dial. And we do need to stop, I think, patronising women by saying these are the capabilities you need to get better at in order to be a better leader. That we need to stop, because I just don't think it's true. I think women are perfectly capable, and they just need to get out. We just need to get out. The guys just need to get out of the way a bit and say, okay, this is what leadership could look like. This is maybe what better leadership looks like. I think the guy who's just leaving, number 10, hopefully soon, is a great example of kind of actually, do you know what? I really think we could do with a reset on kind of what great leadership looks like. So, at EZRA, we won't tell women that this is what women in leadership needs to look like. We will just say, this is what we believe good leadership looks like, and then let you decide what you want to focus on. Same, and I haven't got a voice here particularly, but I'd be interested in voices in the room. How many people of sort of non-white backgrounds get told that you need to deal well with microaggression? How many white people here have been asked that they need to work on reducing how much microaggression they, It's like, where does the problem really lie? Again, are we suggesting that we encourage the minority group to deal with the fact that the majority group's got an issue? I just think we've kind of got that a little bit round the wrong way. It's very difficult to talk to groups sometimes. It's very difficult to talk to companies about saying, we'd like to talk to your majority group. It's like kind of, about what now? Well, privilege, maybe, But that's probably where we need to focus. So, we want to drive coaching deeper, and we want to try and be really careful that we don't position topics to minority groups that suggest that the situation, the issue lies with them. It doesn't. Okay? Particularly, I feel passionately about it for women. I see that all the time. Just a couple of little data insights. I'm a data nerd. I'm a behavioural scientist. I just wanted to share these with you because I think they're interesting. People aren't comfortable talking about DEI, we call it, at EZRA. We find that less than 10% choose to pick up those goals when we give them an option. They are amongst, if not our most, I think the only one that gets chosen less than D&I goals is resource management, which sounds about as interesting as it is, right? It's not the most sexy of goals. So when people download our app, you get an opportunity to choose the goals you want to work with your coach, right? There's about 35 goals. We track all of them for popularity. And at any given point, you're not choosing between 35, you're choosing between like 8 or 10 or something that your organisation has said, this is what we want the frame to be like. But D&I just get absolutely left on the floor. No one wants to focus on it. Now, why is that? Why don't people want to pick that goal up? I think it's a hypothesis that people don't want to say, I'm not good at this. It's an uncomfortable thing to say. It's an uncomfortable thing to admit. So when we frame those kinds of coaching interventions, I think it's really important that we try and limit the field. You know, we need to sort of skew the field to say kind of like, this is a conversation about DEI. That's the conversation you're going to have with the coach. If there are other conversations you may want, we'll try and sort that out another way. But with your coach right now, it's DEI, right? That's the conversation you're having. Otherwise, people tend not to have them, especially in majority groups, wherever those are. And we've got, you know, we have clients big in China. It's like the majority group depends on where you are, but it's very different conversation. Inclusion is super popular with organizations. Organizations want their people talking about inclusion, you know, unconscious bias and those kinds of topics. I think we've kind of maybe moved past that as the big conversation in terms of what people actually want to have. They want to talk about equity and they want to talk about diversity because I think they find those harder topics. You know, how do I treat people equitably? That's tough. People want to be able to treat everyone the same, but you can't really. That doesn't really work because people come at you with all kinds of different backgrounds and different opportunities. So you need to kind of meet people where they're at. That's harder to do as a manager. How do I make those fine discussions? They want that conversation with their coach, and they want the conversation about diversity. It's how do I make connections and bridging to people who are not like me? And how do I make those connections? That's a harder thing. That's the thing they want to talk about. They are more comfortable talking about inclusivity, and that's something they push down. But organizations push inclusivity out and tend not to worry about diversity and equity. So that's interesting. And again, we find that these kinds of topics are hard, they're ingrained, they're beliefs-oriented, and that 3-month programs tend not to touch them. So we track every single competency that we, coach. We track to see has it improved after a certain period of time. Some go great guns after 3 months. These sorts of things don't. So if you're running a program, if you're thinking of launching programs around coaching in this area, give them time to bed in. They don't seem to respond well to our shorter programs. Other things are similar, like anything which is strategic in its nature, the same. But these are tough to get right. I'm conscious that time is probably, we're okay. So I get time I can get the last slide and say, wow, I actually made it to the Q&A slide before running out of time. Anyway, look, so there's a whole bunch of personal views in there. I think to recap, it's about saying, coaching is at risk of being part of the problem unless you get it out to people because it tends to calcify what's already at the top. I think we've got to be careful about, personally, I think we've got to be really careful about saying to women, but to any minority group in the boardroom, that it's the problem lies with them, it's something they need to change about their behaviour. It's not. We look at society and say, actually, do you know what, maybe we need to change that, and be careful about how we pitch that and present that. And then we've got some detail that says kind of the nuance of how you deliver this stuff. Give it time. Think about how you present it. And, what matters more to people sometimes is different to what matters to organisations. Anyway, look, questions. Breathless. Hello.
Hi, I'm Jane.
Hi, Jane.
CSR manager for a consulting firm. My question is, how do you get men into the conversation more? Because in the industry, we look around.
Yeah. There's a few.
Lots of women, gender equality groups at work, lots of women, token man, PTA.
I know.
There's been a man on our PTA. We'd love a man to do it. How do you actually get men into the conversation to help so women aren't, like you say, the minority fighting for the majority? It's how do you do that?
It's so difficult, isn't it? And is it an organisational responsibility? Is it an organisational responsibility or is it one we have as a group of people in society? I don't know. I think it's a really, really tough one. I think the sorts of things I think you can do, though, I think the sorts of things I've seen organisations do, which I think are really, really impressive, is to create space for the conversation to happen. So you say we are going to deliver coaching for people or deliver a training program where we're going to say, what is men's roles? We're going to encourage them to focus on it. Organisations have a big problem with this, though. Can you spot what it is? If you open the space up for men to talk about their role, what's the risk in their mind? It's a big one.
Losing their job.
They all go, "I'll go part-time, please. I want to look after the kids." And they're like, yeah, because the reality is, of course, that for every man that goes part-time, there's probably a woman who is very part-time who can go for 4 days a week or 4.5. But they probably don't work for your company. So, but the reality, so there's almost like we're all stuck, aren't we? If every organisation did it all at once, it would free up everyone. I also, by the way, I'm going to make a horrible assumption here, but I'm guessing you were all probably attracted to people of sort of similar-ish levels of academic and intellectual pace and rigour. And, There's none of you out there that are kind of dating an absolute bozo or vice versa, right? Okay. But this is also a problem, right? Because we end up with couples who are both very, very intellectually, powerful people, very capable, and they're doing this kind of do-si-do, and it's like well, we would be better off having kind of everyone in, right? And that's true all the way through society. Everyone in contributing their unique skills in the ways that they, everyone could contribute more. But we have this kind of one of you works full time. That's almost not a gender, but it is a gender thing because it's always so often the woman that ends up saying I'll do the part-time thing. And it starts early, pay equality. How many couples he works because he earns more? And that sort of begins to happen around about age 28, doesn't it? And then you say, well, I earn more, so I'll stay, And it becomes tricky. Well, how did that happen? Every single time,
It's not really a question, but it's just open to...
Don't need it, go for it. Yeah.
I so agree with you with the whole... that everything does need to change, that men need to do the caring roles, men need to... I don't think it's from companies, though. I think it's from society.
It's bigger than companies, isn't it?
From when they're children, that everybody... The women aren't just told you can do anything. The men are also told...
They can do anything.
They can do anything.
How many men, and I'll talk to the guys in the room for just a second, how many men do you know, or maybe you are these men, that are drifting through their lives without fully taking part in them? Because they go to work 5 days a week, they come back, their wives look at them and go, yeah, I can need a sort of activity if you're going to be a pain in the butt through the weekend. So you go play golf. That's good. That's 5 hours sorted, right?
Lots of men actually, feedback from our company was that they enjoyed being at home during the lockdowns.
Yeah.
They spent more time with their kids, and that they loved that they never would have spent that much time with them, and that they now want that in their lives.
Yeah.
More
So,
so.
I mean, look, there are plenty of guys out there who actually just do not give a crap and you wanted kids, you can deal with it. I don't want. But that's not many. I think there's probably plenty of women there's probably a number of women, it's probably less societally okay for them to say that. It's like, I had kids, but you wanted them, But that's not the majority. Like you say, most will want something. We're out, aren't we? But yes.
Wind yourself up.
I'm going to wind myself up to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you for just letting me kind of rant as I do on this topic. But yeah, hope that was useful and enjoy the rest of your time here.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.